Hello, everyone. Welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I'm here to review the Doctor Who season finale, Reality War. And first off, I'll begin with the non-spoiler thoughts. And I'll give a warning when I go into the spoilers, because this is a huge episode. And I didn't plan this here, but happy Pride Month. It's June 1st, I guess. So yeah, happy Pride Month to all of you out there. So Reality War, when it comes to any T. Davies finales in Doctor Who, you basically expect things to be tied up, not necessarily in the most neat way. More often than not, I feel like things are tied up in sort of a quick and maybe not 100% satisfying way. But in this finale, there were a couple things I was like, okay, I'm not sure that I like how that thread was resolved. But for the most part, I really liked this episode. It's just I have my own reservations. Like I'm not quite sure how I feel about the final moment of it. But for the most part, my gut check is like, okay, this is an 8 out of 10 episode, even though my head is like, well, there are these things here that could have been done a bit better. Are you sure it's an 8? But yeah, I think I feel somewhere around there, and it was great seeing certain characters, and um, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of certain things. But yeah, that I guess that's as vague as I can get without getting into the spoilers. So I'll just get into the spoilers right now. Off the bat, I really love how when the Doctor is falling, after that cliffhanger, we get the return of Anita from Joy to the World. And this is a character that I'd kind of forgotten for the last few weeks. I remember when Joy to the World aired, me and a bunch of other people, like pretty much everyone, wanted to see Anita back with the Doctor again and become a companion, I suppose. So seeing her again, and apparently she's met a fellow and is pregnant now. So it was so satisfying seeing the reunion between her and the Doctor here. Now, in terms of the Ronnie's plan, I do like her plan of, acknowledging how the Master, they don't mention the Master because, not everyone has seen the Chibnall era and saw how it all went down, but how Gallifrey was destroyed, or is like a genetic explosion, and apparently the Ronnie was able to survive by altering her DNA, and then used a time ring to get to Earth, back when she was Mrs. Flood, I suppose, pre-regeneration. But well, I mean, I guess since we didn't see it on screen, this leaves some room for Big Finish, or it could be some sort of, I don't know, Chibnall era Ronnie, if they really want to explore something like that. I do quite like her plan of wanting to reconstruct Gallifrey, but in a way where it's basically her own, I guess, evil Gallifrey, dark Gallifrey, if you'd like. And it's also mentioned that the Time Lords are sterile due to this genetic explosion. And I was kind of confused how the Doctor is affected if the Doctor wasn't present when the Master did his thing. Or was it something that the Master did later in the season, like during the Timeless Children episode, maybe? I don't know, it's been a while. But yeah, it was a bit confusing, kind of odd. And of course, the Ronnie explains that she wants to use Omega to create other Time Lords, and someone brings up the question of like, well, you have Poppy, Poppy being the Doctor and Belinda's daughter, and the Ronnie basically says, but she's half human, she's a pure blood, that type of thing, but eugenics basically, and everyone pretty much groans at her. And she's like, I see I've lost the crowd. And yeah, it's like basically the audience, I'm sure, uh, lost it here. The Ronnie is evil, um, and you have this whole thing going on where Poppy needs to be protected. There's a zero room that gets built by Susan Twist, and Belinda and Poppy are hidden in there. And even though Poppy was created out of a wish, uh, as at least in this episode, at this point in this episode, it's what we are led to believe. And yeah, like she is created out of a wish, and there's more on that later on in the episode. But real or not, they have the memories of Poppy, and this feels very WandaVision. Wanda and Vision have these children, and then she wants to do everything she can to keep them around. So I did kind of wonder if this is Russell T Davies's response to WandaVision, like how the Ruby reveal was a response to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. So Belinda and Poppy are hidden in a zero room. The Doctor sees Ronnie summon Omega through this portal thing within the giant bone building thing. I quite like the bone aesthetic in these episodes. But Omega, is a big, scary CGI monster, doing the Sutek thing again, but not quite as effective, I would say. And then Omega pretty much wants to feed on Time Lords and ends up eating the Ronnie. The latest incarnation of the Ronnie, and Mrs. Flood uses a time ring to escape. So this is where I would like bi-generation to be explained better, because for the last long while I've assumed that the 14th Doctor will regenerate, and then when he does, he ends up at the point where the 15th Doctor pops out of him in the giggle during the bi-generation. But now I'm wondering, will Mrs. Flood, is this basically the same rules where if you interact with her future self, your memories of the event fade away? Like, will Mrs. Flood not remember seeing her future self get devoured and then continue on with the rest of the plan and eventually bi-generate? Yeah, I'm just curious about that because, she got away, so it's like, what's gonna happen with her now? The Doctor has this hidden weapon which he uses to blast Omega, and it was okay this moment. It felt very Ghostbusters-y. And we've seen this sort of thing before last season. Maybe that's why it didn't have as much of an impact. But yeah, I think I was also sort of reeling from the fact that the Ronnie got eaten. And I know Doctor Who characters can come back somehow, but seeing that the latest version of the Ronnie possibly gets killed here, it feels kind of like a wasted opportunity. Again, this is another one of those things where it feels like the threads get resolved too quickly. But Omega is defeated. The Doctor and Belinda, they're not a romantic couple, but they care about their daughter. Poppy is put in a crib. Well, before all that, Ruby is having her own thing going on. She's cornered by Conrad, and Conrad has the wish baby, the one that did the giggle thing last episode. And she wishes for Conrad to be happy. I guess I kind of have mixed feelings about this going on here. They talk about his dad, and like, I don't know, there are some villains where they're so vile that you kind of don't want them to be reformed. But she makes this wish, and after the world goes back to normal, um the it's no longer a thing where May 24th is being repeated over and over again. Um, oh, I forgot to mention, Anita also saw past versions of the Doctor through doors in the Time Hotel. So we see like the 11th Doctor, we see the third Doctor when his memory is being scanned. And you see images of the second and maybe the first Doctor. I remember the episode where I think there was the Daleks who were doing that to him. And then the episode Rogue, she popped in there, and her reaction made me wonder if she had romantic feelings for the Doctor and was kind of disappointed there before meeting her, the father of her not yet born child. But I don't know. I could be wrong there, but yeah. So May 24th is no longer repeating. Everyone is, united, unit and whatnot. And Mel, I realized in this episode, it finally feels like maybe the reason Mel was brought back for this era was just so she could uh, reminisce is the wrong word, but sort of verbally do callbacks to when they faced the Ronnie, so that there's a bit of meaning there. But I don't know. I kind of feel like Morris could still be done with Mel. And so in the TARDIS, Poppy is in this crib, and the Doctor and Belinda are very much keen on caring for her. But Ruby notices that Poppy disappears, and their memories of Poppy are disappearing. And for a little bit here, I did wonder if the Doctor still remembered Poppy, but was trying to cue Ruby on the fact that she should stop bringing Poppy up if Belinda's forgetting her, and it would be best not to remember. Well, his reasoning that it might be best not to remember something so sad like losing a child who existed and no longer does anymore. But in the next scene, when they're at Unit HQ, it feels like the Doctor really doesn't remember Poppy, and Ruby is the only one who remembers for some reason. There's all this stuff where I feel like I would have been a wreck if this episode ended here with this whole Poppy thing being unresolved and Ruby being the only one who remembers. But I checked the time and it looked like there was like 20 minutes left, so it's like, oh, okay, so they're still gonna do something here. And Ruby's trying to convince everyone of Poppy's existence and basically being like, you've seen strange things happen, you know that this is possible. And then we get these reminders that the Doctor will help people continue to exist. Even Susan Twist is technically only a year old, but he helped her. He's helped all these people. Ruby when she faded from existence. He's helped Belinda when he went through her life during that time explosion. So I liked this moment with all the reminders of what the Doctor stands for. And you even have the music from The Doctor Falls, which, I love that music. You could argue if it feels kind of like a cheap trick to reuse that for this. It does make me wonder if the music could finally get an official release as a series 15 or season 2 soundtrack or something, because the series 10 soundtrack never got released last I checked. But the Doctor is convinced that he has to save Poppy, and so he goes back into his TARDIS. He realizes that he has to use regeneration energy to alter the time. It's explained better, but also not explained very well in the episode. He has to alter the timeline by just a little bit, but to do that, he has to shoot regeneration energy into the TARDIS console. And he realizes that this means that he'll have to have a new face. And I'd heard the rumors that he'd regenerate at the end of his second season. I did not want to believe those rumors because it's such a short-lived run. He still has not really reunited with Rogue. I thought we'd get more of that. He I was hoping he'd break the 3-season rule, or 3-season curse, I guess, by having at least 4 seasons, not by having just 2 seasons. This feels like he's basically only got as much time as Colin Baker got 40 years ago. So he reminisces about his faces, like, about, I will miss you, you were the best. And then you hear a voice saying, the best of the males, maybe, the male doctors. And then we see Jodie Whittaker herself as the 13th Doctor. And I stood up in this moment. I was just amazed that she was back. I wasn't expecting her back so soon. It's been less than 3 years, a little more than 2.5 since we last saw her on the show. And there are these 13th Doctor and Yaz audios coming out soon. So I was really taken off guard, and I thought this was really amazing. How they have this heart to heart and talk about how, like, it always is tough going to a new face. And I like how the 15th Doctor says, Doctor, I love you, and like gives her a hug, and she's like, I don't say those things. And he's and they mentioned that she loves Yaz, and she's like, I should tell her that. And 15 is like, you never do, but she knows. And it kind of feels like this was Russell's way of trying to you know, trying to heal the fans who felt like they were rubbed the wrong way by how the Doctor and Yaz situation was handled. I do appreciate that these threads from the Chibnall era are still touched on. I love 13's cameo here. It is strange that we did not get more of the fugitive Doctor, but I think because Russell said that he has a 4-season plan, I think that we'll see the fugitive Doctor again at some point over the next couple years, and perhaps Susan as well. I was a little left wanting because we didn't see Susan again in this, but there's so much going on that you really need to devote more than just this finale to the Susan of it all. So I hope that Carol Ann Ford is back next season and has more to do, because yeah, like, we really need Doctor and Susan closure on the show itself. In the 5 Doctors, they never really got to talk, so it would be neat to see them talk on the show again. So after 13 disappears, 15 shoots a regeneration energy into the console, and this leads to reality being uh, altered, or I guess back to how it originally was before the first adventure of the season, I guess, because he lands in Belinda's yard and goes into her house and sees Poppy. And instead of half Time Lord, half human, the Doctor does a scan. Poppy is fully human. And it's explained that this is Belinda's daughter that she had with this guy named Richie. Again, similar to Ruby's dad, another dad that we don't see. And Anita's child's dad as well. Like, what's with these dads that we don't see? What's going on here? But I guess they didn't feel like they needed to cast someone who could just not be in the scene. But yeah, I'm really glad that Poppy is back in existence. It's not the Wish Poppy, it's the Poppy who existed before and then was sort of erased. I think because of the time explosion. Is that what happened, or is it because of Conrad's wish? I'm not really 100% clear, but I really like this moment where the Doctor tells Poppy that I don't have a daughter, but if I did, I'd wish she were you. Um, and I do kind of wish that Jen, the Doctor's daughter, would be acknowledged, come back in this era. Of course, the Doctor thinks that Jen is dead because he didn't see that scene at the end where she is revived and just goes off on her own adventures, and she has her own audios. But I'd like to see Jen come back as well as Susan. All this stuff going on with the Doctor feels like it's leading to them needing to look for their family, whatever family is left anywhere. So the doctor says goodbye to Belinda, and she says that she hopes to see him again, and he says, "I hope so too, but it won't be this face." And of course, he never explained regeneration to her, so ominous. He didn't really say a proper goodbye to Ruby in this finale, but I guess the goodbye in the previous season finale might be enough. And I think we'll probably see Ruby again, and hopefully Belinda. I was actually hoping there would be a Doctor, Ruby, and Belinda TARDIS team, but now I'm not so sure. But I hope to see both of them come back because I kind of feel like Belinda didn't get as much character work in this season as Ruby maybe did. But on the other hand, I've heard other people say that Ruby didn't get enough character depth in her first season. So I don't know, but um, I hope that they are mainstays still in the next couple seasons. It would be nice to have that bit of continuity, still having them around. So the doctor is in his TARDIS, and he says he doesn't want to regenerate alone. And he opens the TARDIS doors, looks into outer space, and we see Joy, the star, and he says, "Joy to the world." And I thought this was really nice. That the Christmas special from last year, Joy to the World, is more important than we perhaps thought it would be. That this will be a one-off character, but it's nice that the doctor chooses not to be alone when regenerating, because there are times when that is not the case. Maybe there are fewer times than not. I don't know, but the doctor regenerates, and then we see the face that they get, which is the face of Billy Piper, who says something like, "Oh, hello," and that was a moment where I I was really taken aback. I've never felt this way during a regeneration scene. It's a moment where I'm not really sure that I want this for Billy Piper to be the 16th Doctor. It feels strange to me because Rose was a character that the Doctor had romantic feelings for thousands of years ago from his perspective, or their perspective, I guess I should say. I think it's thousands of years, at least 1,000. So there's that aspect of it that feels somewhat cringe, but I don't know. I've seen other people say that they like this concept of the doctor having the face of someone who taught them to feel again. Because after the Time War, Rose helped the doctor be a bit more open, um, not quite to the highest extent, um, but yeah, more open than the War Doctor was, I guess. So, uh, I don't know. This feels. I'm not really sure about this, and I suppose one could argue that it's not cringe because the Doctor has been over Rose for a long time. Many centuries, millennia, whatever. So it might be fine, but I don't know. And people have pointed out that instead of the credits saying introducing Billy Piper as the Doctor, it just says introducing Billy Piper. So I kind of wonder if there's trickery going on there. I've seen people speculate that maybe Billy Piper is playing the TARDIS or even the Ronnie. Heck, maybe someone could say the Master. I don't know. But either way, it feels gimmicky. Um, just a bit like how David Tennant coming back felt gimmicky, and it kind of feels like Russell T Davies can't let go, really. Um, so I don't know, and I don't know when we are gonna get confirmation on whether Billy is the Doctor or not. I've seen a couple articles, and I'm not sure that's been outright confirmed. So if there has been confirmation, feel free to let me know. In fact, I'll do a quick Google search, see if there's like a Wikipedia article for the 16th Doctor yet. Um, And Rose as a character, I was not really a fan of Rose during those early seasons, but I ended up liking her more in the um Big Finish audios that feature her. And of course, there's some Ninth Doctor and Rose audios coming out in a couple months, which should be interesting. But yeah, okay. I see the TARDIS wiki has a 16th Doctor article. Uh, and I wonder if they have a source that confirms that she's a 16th Doctor. Um, yeah, maybe she is a 16th Doctor. I don't know. Um, maybe the simplest answer really is the answer. Um, okay, so Wikipedia says that Piper's official role remains undisclosed, though some sources described her as portraying the 16th incarnation of the Doctor. So this might be a wait and see type of thing. Either way, it feels gimmicky, and it seems like there probably will be a somewhat of a break between Doctor Who seasons. And I bet the break was so that there'd be more secrecy surrounding this moment, because these things got filmed quite a bit ahead of airing. And so if people saw that there was this new season with Billy Piper airing or a new special or something, then people will get suspicious. I do wonder if maybe we'll have Billy just for a special or a couple specials and then get to a different face, but I don't know. For now, we have a trailer for The War Between the Land and the Sea, the upcoming spin-off featuring the Silurians, I think. Or no, it's the Sea Devils, right? Is that them? But it was tough to feel invested in the trailer because they released it so soon after the finale, and I'm not sure if there's a release date, so it's tough to be invested when we're still reeling from this finale. So yeah, I don't know. I also should mention that I like how the 15th and 13th Doctor's outfits matched. I kind of wonder if that was to um if there's like if that was intentional or if that was just a coincidence. It's got to be intentional, right? You look at their outfits and it's the same color palette. Like, I don't know, but yeah, really gonna miss Ncuti Gatwa. Supposedly, he's a busy guy, so maybe this is why he only got 2 seasons, and I'm sure we'll see him again in some multi-Doctor story in the future. I I guess this since his era on TV is over, Big Finish could technically do stories with him now. So maybe they'll ask him, or maybe they'll do like some short trips or companion chronicles or something that have someone else narrate stories that feature him. I don't know, but hope we get him back in something. I know people here and there are upset that he never faced the Daleks, the Cybermen, or the Master, but I don't think every Doctor needs to on screen. 15 faced Cybermen in the comics, I believe, and maybe someday we'll get an audio where he faces the Daleks or something. But I would rather experiment with having new adversaries or bringing back old ones who should have come back a long, long time ago, but haven't for some reason. Like, I'd rather play with those toys than use the ones that have been played with over and over again in pretty much every era since the show's been revived, or even before being revived. The staples. I'd rather have all these other things than the staples, even if there are a couple duds here and there. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about the potential direction of the show going forward, but I'm still gonna watch. I love Doctor Who. I'm invested. I'm gonna keep watching the show and keep listening to the audios and read anything else I can get my hands on as well. So Yeah, I still think the finale I would rate an 8 out of 10, even if there are things here and there that I'm sort of not sure and have my own reservations about. But yeah, I guess that'll do it. I'm sure there are probably some things I forgot to touch on, but this was one huge finale, and I guess we'll see what happens in the future. So thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and I'll see you all soon.